This meeting of the Fox River Valley Public Library District Board of Trustees will be held without a quorum of trustees physically present, but is authorized by the Governor of Illinois pursuant to COVID-19 Executive Order Number 5 dated March 16, 2020, and subsequent reissues, as well as the Governor's Emergency Administrative Act dated June 12, 2020. As board president, I have determined an in-person meeting is not prudent at this time due to the coronavirus pandemic that the governor has declared an emergency. A verbatim recording of this meeting will be made available to the public. In addition, interim library director Roxanne Bennett is physically present at the library for this meeting. Due to the public health concerns and extension of the governor's stay-at-home mandate by Executive Order 2020-33 and the subsequent reissues, this meeting is being conducted electronically. Anyone wishing to observe and/or comment must email libraryboard@foxrivervalleypubliclibrarydistrict.info no later than 12 p.m. on Tuesday, February 16th, and will receive online access for the meeting. If you do not have electronic access and would like to make a public statement, you can call the library at 847-428-3661 before 5 p.m. on Tuesday, February 16th, and leave a message indicating that you would like your message to be read into the record during the public comment section of the meeting. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes. A recording of this meeting will be available on the library's website by Friday, February 26th. Now, can everyone hear me clearly? Okay, good. Okay, I will now call to order the Fox River Valley Public Library District Board of Trustees meeting for February 16, 2021 at 7:04 p.m. May we have the flag put up and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, can we have a roll call, please? See who's here.
Dave. Dave. He's here. I just haven't heard him yet.
I see.
Dave, you're muted.
Maybe you're muted, Dave.
And I think he's trying to figure out how to unmute.
Here.
There you
Hey,
go.
all right. Chris.
Here.
Mike.
Here.
Brian.
Here.
Nikki is here. Christina.
Here.
And Richard.
Here. Okay, very good. Now let's move on to public comment. The board recognizes its responsibility to provide an opportunity for anyone wishing to comment at any meeting to do so. Due to the current public health concerns, the February meeting will be conducted electronically. Any person viewing the meeting online and/or wishing to comment will be accommodated in accordance with the public notice I read previously. And citizens will not be requested to sign in to comment. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes. Do we have anyone online with us that would like to make a public comment? Do we have anyone on the telephone that would like to leave a message, make a comment? Roxanne,
No.
Has anyone phoned in any messages?
No, sir.
Okay. So we'll move on then to the president's report. I've just got a couple of items tonight. As you know, the filing deadline for candidates for the upcoming election has now passed. And I'm pleased to announce that we will have 3 candidates running for election. Dave, of course, will be running for re-election. His name will be on the ballot. And we also have 2 write-in candidates that have gone through the process and are now officially listed as write-in candidates. The first one is Marianne Della Maria. Did I say that right, Chris? Okay, good. And Matt Goyke. I invited both of those individuals to attend the meeting tonight, and I promised to introduce them to the board. However, Matt got back to me and said he was unable to attend because he's traveling, and Marianne is having technical issues with her equipment, so she's not able to be with us. But hopefully next month.
Anybody else having problems with him?
Yes.
I've met I know Marianne.
With 6 members. So say again, please.
You were breaking up there, Richard.
Oh. Okay.
How do you
So
spell Matt's last name?
Matt Goyke, Goyke. I think that's how it's pronounced, isn't it?
Correct.
And is
Yes,
he
that's
Matt
correct.
or Matthew? How specific do you have to be for write-in?
It has to match. So,
Yeah, it has to match whatever he put in,
and
because I had to do my whole name, unfortunately.
So could we get a reading, Roxanne or Karen, exactly how they have registered?
Sure, I can get that for you.
Okay, good. And then I'll get it out to all the board members.
Very good.
So we'll only have to have 1 appointed spot. And as we've done in the past, we'll start advertising for candidates prior to the May meeting. So after we install the new board and have election of officers, the new president then can begin interviewing, and hopefully by the June meeting, we'll be able to present a candidate for confirmation by the board. Then we'll be up to full strength. So that's good. The second item, the annual economic interest statement should be sent out to the board members in March. Now, those leaving the board will probably not receive one as their term of office expires very close to the filing deadline. So if by chance you get one, let your conscience be your guide as far as filling it out and sending it back, because it's they'll be only a matter of a few days in between ones, but I most probably will not receive one. Okay, that's all I've got for a president's report. Can we move on now to the director's report?
Sure. Okay, so we've got the cash flow analysis. And I apologize for the tiny little print on this. I wish it were easier to read. But you can, the real key elements are the boxes that are below, listed below. And, you know, we're already past the first one, transferring $1,200 from Illinois funds to First American to earn interest on operating funds. The February 2021, we have not made that transfer yet, but we will need to transfer $1 million to First American from Illinois funds to pay bills between February and when we get our May payments. Or when we start getting our tax payments for next year, which start in May, but we really get the bigger one in June. And then, let's see, October 2021, there was a planned transfer of $6 million to cover the Dundee Library remodel, which was, which Lauren had scheduled. She'd worked out the cash flow analysis. That's on hold at this point, but that also answers the question that was asked at the last meeting about why we were heavy in cash. It was because of remodel was anticipated and the need for cash, as opposed to laddering out our investment maturities long term, was anticipated. So at this point, we're needing to think about reladdering some of those. Rates are down so low right now that investing a lot of it longer term, we're really going to hurt our yield, because you hope that the rates are going to come up somewhat. But anyway, we're working with our investment advisor on recommendations for that. And Brian will be getting with you actually later this week with some questions about reinvesting things that recently came due and possibly transferring some from Illinois funds back into Ellers for longer term laddering. So, any questions on that? And Heather, if you've got anything to throw in, jump in.
Not really, no.
Well, I guess my one question, where we left it with, with the architects and on the different remodel options, we may still need. I guess I'm not totally convinced that we need to start piling all that back into Ellers, because I mean, maybe the timing would be off a little bit what we had originally projected, but we haven't officially declined doing any of that work,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Correct.
That's
Correct. Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. So for right now, we may be fine, but they were going to make some suggestions to us for getting some higher yield short term.
Well, sure.
So we'll see what they come up with.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions on the department head reports or the dashboard or, my written report?
I love the fact that all but 2 furloughed staff members will be, have returned to work.
Right. We're down to 1 now, and we're hoping that one will be back before the end of the month. So
I do have a question for Carrie.
yeah.
She said curbside service continued into January, though we did see a downtick in visits, most likely because of weather, snow, but further supported by the reductions in our items checked out at Algonquin.
Our items that went to Algonquin Public Library, like interlibrary loan. So the trend of checkouts going down was happening at Algonquin Public Library too. Is what you?
Oh, okay. Because it said of our items checked out at Algonquin, so I didn't follow where.
Right.
Yeah, good question though, Nikki. I had the same.
Would be our
Makes
items
sense.
placed on hold that people wanted to pick up at Algonquin.
Right.
They can pick up our items at Algonquin?
Sure, because they're part of our consortium.
I didn't know you could.
So if you're a patron of the Algonquin Public Library and there's something at our library that you want, you can request it through interlibrary loan
Yes.
and pick it up at your library.
Got it.
Yeah. if for whatever reason somebody who lived in our district wanted to pick it up at the Cary Library, they totally could.
Right.
Yep.
I thought it was great that Kirsten submitted the library for the Northern Kane Chamber of Congress Award of Excellence. That's pretty awesome.
It is.
Yes,
So thank you to Kirsten for doing that.
Yes.
absolutely.
And then I also love, because I had that down too. And then I love that we had 65 online card registrations with 26 of those becoming physical cards. I mean, that's a good percentage.
Yeah.
Especially considering when you were, I mean, it's not like you were open for games. So they would have had to come and do curbside pickup.
Exactly, yeah, and I realized I was muted for the first half of my answers for your question, so thank you, Roxanne, for chiming in on my behalf. I was like, why can't they hear me? Yeah, it was really great to see, because even under normal circumstances, getting people to follow through with those online registrations has always been kind of hit and miss, so the fact that we were closed, people were really going for that.
Yeah, that's great.
I also wanted to thank the staff at the library for what they did for Fish Food Pantry. I think that was amazing. Nikki and I both belong to an organization that supports both food pantries in our area. And, you know, they have really been struggling because of the need this year. And I was so pleased to read that our library made such a fantastic donation to them. They really need it. And I also was so excited about the Boredom Busters. I think that is just so very cool.
Yeah. We also had, now actually, did it make it into this? We did cards, Valentine's cards for seniors. We participated in that program. You know what, that's probably saved for next
That was DeWitt's
month.
program.
Yeah, did you do it through Senator DeWitt?
That's a question for Jason.
We did, and it'll be included in the February report. But yeah, we collected quite a few cards. We had enough Valentine's Day cards for each staff member to fill one out. So I think we submitted about 60 cards to Senator DeWitt's office, and they'll be distributed to seniors at facilities within our library district.
They, so Chris and I both donated through that because Senator DeWitt's support staff, Becky Gillum, who is in Rotary with Lauren, and now I forget who's in Rotary now.
Me.
Dave.
Yes,
Dave.
and Dave is in Rotary, but I talked to
And
Becky.
Heather.
Yeah, and Heather's
Yeah,
in.
that's it, Heather.
right,
I talked
Heather.
to Becky on the day of the deadline, and I think they collected more than 3,000 cards total. So
My husband took mine in on the day of the deadline and talked to her, and they just had bags and bags. It was just the coolest thing.
well, my husband dropped him off at her house, but he actually dropped him off at the neighbor's house. So that was why I had to call her. I'm like, Becky. So I think it's great. I love that the library is doing so many community things. That's wonderful.
I do too. I think it gives us a presence that is just invaluable. I really do.
Agreed.
One thing I wanted to add, actually, this will show up in next month's report as well, but you should be aware of it. We were notified by the Park District this morning that their staff, when plowing the Randall Oaks parking lot, totally destroyed the book drop.
Oh, no.
So it is non-functional, and they are going to replace it.
Good.
But it'll be a little while. You know, it takes a while to get it ordered and in place. So anything that people want to return at Randall Oaks right now either needs to be returned when the library's open, or or they need to bring it over here to put it in the outside drop or take it out to Gilbert's. So, ouch.
Oh,
How fast were they going if they totally destroyed it?
I don't know. And Hank, their their facilities guy called me and said, don't yell at me. I already yelled at them. They've been plowing that parking lot for 10 years and haven't dinged the book drop once. And they just, I haven't seen the picture of it yet, but I understand, the door won't close and, it is not repairable.
How far off the curb is it situated?
It's not very far off because you have to be able to pull up and, and reach from the window.
Right.
But it's also possibly that, they're pushing snow past it. And I don't know whether they knocked it off with the snow or whether they, actually hit it with the blade, because I haven't seen it.
All right.
But,
I have a question about the dashboard.
yeah.
I saw that you increased the checkout period to 6 weeks.
We are increasing. That has not happened yet.
Okay. I'm just wondering why. I don't have an opinion. I'm just wondering why.
Yeah, let's see. That was a matter of discussion at the management team. Who wants to spearhead the answer to that? Carrie?
Yeah, make sure I'm actually turned on. I am. Okay. So Christina, when we were closed back in summer, we had extended the checkout periods for pretty much everything to 6 weeks just to reduce the amount of time, reduce people bringing stuff in. And so it was decided last week that we were going to revert all those loan periods back to what they had been pre-COVID. We did it mostly as a courtesy, and then we considered it at the end of the year, and then we reclosed again. And so now that we're back open, we're just going back to the beginning.
And will you revert back after, like, when we get into the post-COVID times? Will you go back to the normal checkout periods, or are you thinking you'd like to stay at 6 weeks?
No, we are, as of right now, we're working to revert back to those normal periods on March 1st for everything.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Which is 3 weeks plus an automatic renewal?
For books, it's 3 weeks, and then you could get up to 6 additional weeks as long as there aren't any holds on those books.
Okay.
The big thing that it'll affect is like DVDs and video games, because those went from 1 week to 6 weeks. But
And that has a real negative impact on circulation numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't really keep them that long, but I think part of the goal is to get back to a more normal circulation pattern. And we don't have fines as long as they return them, or late fees, and they do auto renew. So this just gets us back into a more normal circulation pattern. And we've got a PR schedule for rolling it out and notifying people. Actually, Kirsten went over that at management team with us today. We're about 2 weeks out from the change of going back to normal circulation, and we'll be, I think, tomorrow or the next day. She'll, at some point this week, she'll be beginning the, notification that it's coming.
Okay.
So.
I have a question on the, it seems like that new apartment complex next to the rec center is getting quite a few residents. And I'm wondering, are we seeing any of those at the library here at Randall Oaks? Is there any activity we can discern?
I'm not sure where we are in terms of timing on that, because we really just reopened that facility.
Right. Okay.
So I think it's a little soon, unless Carrie, do you have any stats or anything? Or
No hard stats, just more anecdotal. I have noticed that a couple of the temporary cards have come from that residence. And that was/is one of my goals, was to reach out to those apartments and invite them to the library that's literally across the road from them. I was hoping we would get to it when all of the apartments were finished, so we weren't half and half with it, but some residents do know that Randall Oaks is there.
Okay, good, because that's going to be lots of folks there.
Yeah.
Could you, instead of maybe reaching out to them individually, could you ask if there's like a bulletin board or signage or something like with the mailboxes that
So yeah,
for a short-term solution?
What we did last 2019, I guess, the Springs at Canterfield, my staff stuffed envelopes for each resident, and the apartment complex was nice enough to put it in their residents' mailboxes for us, and it was just a blank card saying, just come on in, you're ready to go. So that was going to be the same plan for this one.
Good. Very good, thank you.
Mike Tennis with a question on the department reports comment in question for Heather. Most of the board, perhaps other than Dave, might not get excited with Heather taking a government fund accounting class, but I was delighted to see that. Mm-hmm. And so that's my comment. And then seeing that training on government fund accounting, the next thought I had was the MIP fund accounting system, and whether Heather has received training on that, given the change with Mary and Lauren having left and Mary leaving. Where do we stand with that?
So I already was semi-familiar with MIP. Just as a manager, I've used it to do budgeting and that sort of thing. And I've used it for the OpenGov, getting reports for OpenGov. I'm currently working with Mary directly to get training from her, and along with Eva, who's going to be a replacement. So we've gone pretty far with it. I've been training with Mary for about 2 weeks now. And I'm pretty confident that I think it will be a good transition. She has a bunch of notes on how to do everything. So it's seeming very positive at the moment.
Okay. Just one comment, Heather. Usually the trickiest part is the non-routine, which is loading the new budget and closing out the old fiscal year and starting a new fiscal year. So that's areas I would encourage you to focus on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, unfortunately, we do have, we have a support contract with, with the supplier of the software, and they will assist at any time when Heather's having, has questions that aren't addressed by our existing documentation. She can reach out to them for that, for assistance with that.
Great, good to hear that.
And yeah. How much longer is Mary with us? Or?
Mary's last day is Friday.
Okay.
And she's got this whole week with Eva, who's taking her place. She did 2 days of training, one a week and a half ago, and then another one last week with Eva. And then they're spending this whole week together, going through, they just did a check run. So, she's gone through that process. So, we're pretty comfortable with that. And Heather spent a lot of time with Mary last week. So.
Thank you, Heather.
Good.
Yeah, we're feeling much more comfortable about that than I was at the last meeting. You know, I was pretty worried about it, but it feels very much like we've got things in hand at this point. So, okay, if there aren't any other questions, that's all we have.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn our attention then to the consent agenda. Before I ask for a motion to approve, are there any items any trustee would like left out of the consent agenda?
Richard, Mike Tennis here. If we could hold out A1D, please.
A1D. Any other items to be held out? Okay, if not, I would like a motion to approve the consent agenda items A1A through A1C and A1E through A1J. May I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Dave, move.
Seconded.
Chris, second. As is our method of operation, there's no discussion on consent agenda. Could we have a roll call vote, please? Nikki, could we have?
Sorry, I was muted. Dave.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Nikki, yes. Christina.
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, now may I have a motion to approve item A1D?
It's Brian, so moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Dave, second. Mike, what's your question on A1D?
The question is in the area of print copy revenue. We budgeted 20,000, and because of the pandemic and 2 closures of the library, we have been doing a lot of free copying services. So year to date through 7 months, there's only $400 some of revenue. And so my question is, now that the library is open again, are we returning to charging for copy services?
Roxanne, Heather, either one?
Yeah. There is not a plan at this point while we're still under COVID restrictions to return to charging for printing. There are a number of logistical challenges with that. And Heather, you and or Jason are probably the better ones to explain what those logistical challenges are if the board needs it. But you know, are you interested in that level of detail?
I'm trying to understand if that's going to be a budget variance of $20,000 for the year.
You can anticipate that yes, it will be a budget variance of $20,000 for the year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Okay, may we have a roll call vote on A1D?
Dave.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Nikki is yes. Christina.
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, we have no unfinished business tonight, so we'll move on to the new business. I call your attention to Exhibit C1, Landscape Maintenance Contract. May I have a motion to authorize the director to enter into a 3-year contract for basic lawn maintenance with Siebert Landscaping with a 3-year value up to $14,000?
So moved. Nikki.
Second.
And Nikki with the motion and Dave with the second. Roxanne, would you like to briefly explain this? It's pretty self-explanatory, but go ahead.
Yeah, it is. We were, I have to say, we were pretty disappointed not to get much in terms of competitive bidding. The fact that we invited 13 local firms and only got 2 responses was disappointing. But at least one of the firms that, well, both of the firms that replied have previously provided service to the library. Siebert has been our most recent, and they've, for the past 3 years, they did our lawn. Prior to that, we used Barrels. One of the reasons we switched to Siebert was cost. We've been really pleased with the service they've provided. They also do Village Green next door, which, you know, maybe one of the reasons that we're that we get a little bit of a deal from them is they park their equipment in our, you know, along our drive when they're doing Village Green as well. So, you know, they got a 2-for-1 there. But anyway, we recommend this extension. It's a no-brainer, really.
Any questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. Nikki, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Dave.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
I think I heard a yes, Brian.
Yes.
Thank you. Nikki is yes. Christina.
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item C2, the director search. Since this is a discussion only, there is no need for a motion. As you know, our Vice President and Personnel Liaison, Christina, is the leader in our effort to come up with a director search plan. So I'd like to turn the meeting over to Christina to bring us up to date on where you're at.
Thanks. Okay. We had a pretty good turnout for the survey, and I can say that I was very pleased with the frankness and the honest responses that we received to our survey questions. I think that's going to be so helpful to us moving forward as we work through this process. What we did yesterday is we tried to pull out from each of the stakeholder groups 5-ish kind of top priorities in each group that we surveyed. So among trustees, we found that vision for trends, the ability to recommend and implement policy, represent the library through outreach, focus on community diversity, and budget management seem to be the top priorities of the trustees. Management top priorities seem to be communication and transparency. They want someone who will support staff and managers. They'd like to see a commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. They'd like to see fiscal and legal knowledge. They'd like to see someone who will consider the building and the space a priority. And they'd like someone with realistic expectations, plans, and vision. And the staff's priorities were communication and transparency, clear goals and vision, trust in employees and their abilities, equity, diversity and inclusion, and again, the building. I appreciated, Mike, you mentioned that that you'd like to see the job description reworked maybe for clarity and brevity. And thank you for sending me that revision. We started playing around with that a little. And we also found a job posting from Ithaca, New York, that we thought was an excellent example of what a good job posting would look like. And if any trustees would like to look at that, in that Google folder that I shared with you previously, you can see the Ithaca job posting packet. So our plan now is to take these top priorities and weave them into a job posting that we will model on Ithaca's job posting. We've asked Kirsten to put together some of the promotional pieces of the job posting and handle some of the graphic design for us. Those of us working on this kind of have homework over the next week to put together some of those pieces. And then hopefully we will have something tangible put together, you know, in about a week or two. I really feel like the survey results are going to be so helpful, not just in this first part where we are putting together the job posting, but really I'm looking to really dig into those survey results when creating a rubric for potential candidates, so that then we can look at those priorities more granularly and see what we can pull out and make measurable. So that's really a priority going forward. And I just want the trustees to know, the management to know, the staff to know that not only are those 5 priorities per stakeholder group important to us, but also the rest of the stuff that you guys said is going to come into play when we are assessing candidates. So thank you to everyone who filled that out. So aside from those top priorities, I'm curious, is there anything else that you feel like we need to take into consideration as we go forward? And also, once we have that packet job description put together, do you feel like you need for us to come back to you before we post it? Or do you feel like, based on those priorities and based on what we've heard so far, that we can go forward? So those are kind of my 2 questions for you tonight.
So let's deal with the first issue, the one about the job description. So it's your intent to restructure the job description to better reflect?
Not necessarily the job description, but in the job posting, we're going to kind of create more of a quantitative end and a qualitative end of the job posting. So, you know, duties and responsibilities and the ideal candidate. So looking at kind of those 2 sides. We're going to be pulling the most important pieces from the job description to put in those 2 kind of buckets.
Okay, the reason I mention that is in the current contract or current agreements with the director, we reference the job description, the specific one that's in force. And we'll probably want to do that or something very similar for the next director.
For sure, and we're not looking to dig into the job description per se.
Okay.
But you know, I feel like it's difficult to discern the real priorities from the minutia in that job description. So we'd like to make that clearer.
Okay.
For this process.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I've got it right here and it's just so, I mean, we've talked about that for how long have we, for the entire time I've been on the board, we've talked about this every time the director's review comes up. Are we looking at changing anything with the MLS with a minimum of 7 years professional public library service? Anything changing with that on a requirement? Is it still 7?
I don't know. I guess that's up to you.
I don't know enough about this type of position. What would be the minimum we would actually, especially if somebody meets all the other things, but maybe they only have 5 or they have 6 or something.
Nikki, I had advocated to Christina that rather than saying 7 years, I said 5 years plus of managerial experience, as opposed to just 7 years total experience. The focus being managerial.
Yeah, and I don't think that you'd see anyone who would be qualified and have the requisite experience that we're looking for without management experience. So we can be more explicit about that if you'd like.
Is there a problem with reducing it to 5? Like, would it help open us up to a little bit more candidates that might be that forward thinking, that might be the equity and diversity, that might be have vision if we don't put that 7? I'm just.
It's a good point.
Maybe. Yeah, you know, as a teacher, I always err on the side of more experience than less for administration, but I can definitely see your point. I mean, in 5 years, 7 years, you know, we can go with 5 if that's what you guys think.
Can I just mention when you know when this was put together, it was as far as some of the minutia pieces, they were, you know, run through legal HR. You know, some of that is there for that purpose.
Yeah.
But as far as the experience level and, you know, et cetera, allowing yourself some leeway in there is a good thing. But you can always, if you don't have candidates that are meeting that level, you know, you have the ability to select somebody who may have less, you know, fewer years, but maybe some other equivalent skills that you want to substitute for them.
Well, that's why I was thinking if we do 5, then we open ourselves up to maybe more that might have something else. I don't know.
Yeah, and somebody with 5 years experience, if we're saying 7, they might not even bother to apply. So,
right. And maybe they don't have 5 years or they don't have 7 years, you know, in a public library service, but they have something that's equivalent that, okay, they got 5 years here and they have 2 years, I don't know, in a private library or a school library or something. I don't know. I just would like to open it up a little bit more. It sounds like we might have a very hard time. And maybe that helps just a tiny bit to get us a few more candidates.
Yeah. You can also just say or equivalent in the ad.
In the ad. One thing, Nikki, yesterday we had quite an extensive conversation about this, and the three of us all have library experience, mine being the least of anybody's, but we all kind of agreed that the library, you know, when you said 5 years here and 2 years someplace else, we all kind of agreed that whatever their experience was that they brought to the table really needs to be library experience. And I gave myself as an example. I was a school librarian, and I think I did a pretty good job. But when I look at the requirements that would be for a public school library, a public library, I wouldn't even think about applying for that. Yeah. And even with Christina's PhD, she said that kind of made her a little wonky too about the requirements. So we did feel pretty strongly, the three of us, that there needed to be, that something else really shouldn't be anything but library. But I personally would not have a problem with saying 5+ or the equivalent.
Yeah.
I just really feel strongly it needs to be library experience.
That I don't necessarily disagree with. I mean, it's got to be massively mostly library, but maybe it's not all public library or it's something
that I agree with. It could be school library, it could be private library, but library, I think, needs to be the operative word there, in my opinion.
So we'll go ahead and post at 5. Does anyone else have anything else that you think we should be really focusing on or thinking about, or maybe a really important priority of yours that you think that I missed?
I think first you asked if we thought that the final draft needed to be approved by the entire board, and I don't see. I think we ought to be given a chance to comment on that. Maybe just send the draft out and give everybody, 3 or 4 days to look at it, and if as long as there aren't any major objections, then proceed.
Would that violate the Open Meetings Act?
I wondered.
No.
As long as
I don't think so, because you're just asking the trustees to comment on a document.
But you can't comment all. You can only comment back to
exactly.
Christina. Yeah. That's the important thing.
Right.
Okay.
Then absolutely we can do that. Does everyone find that to be sufficient?
I'm okay with it.
Yeah. I think
sounds good.
Moves things along a little faster. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to pick it to death. I just would like to know what it says. So in case somebody asks me, or whatever, I can just say, not that I think they will.
It never hurts to have it never hurts to have a couple of
right
extra proofreader eyes on it before something, actually goes out there. So.
And thanks for all the work that you guys are doing on this too.
Very much.
Thank you for that. I think we're making good progress, and I think that the way we're going about this process is, I think it's going to be good for the library.
I just took a quick peek at this Ithaca.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could almost, I was laughing, you could almost pull their name out and plug ours in some of these places. It's
yeah, it's perfect, isn't it? I really like it.
I do too. I like it a lot. I like the at a glance. I like how they're educating about the community, educating about the library before they even talk about here's what the job is. Because one of the things that I think we talked about at last meeting was how much we want somebody who's part of the community who wants to put themselves into the community, so hopefully then they stay.
Right.
They're not, it's not a transient, it's not just a job, it's a,
Right.
I don't want to say a way of life because that sounds really cliche, but
What,
No, but
Christine,
you're right.
what would the timeline look like? Assuming the posting's ready and sometime before the next meeting, before our March meeting, and
So
what do you foresee?
we can get this done, in the next 2 weeks, and that, that mostly depends on, I don't want to put undue pressure on Kirsten, and it kind of depends on,
We'll go ahead.
no pressure.
No pressure, Kirsten.
Yeah, Kirsten has indicated that she should be able to, meet our, our anticipated work deadline. I've asked her to get the very rough outline of it together, her part of it by the end of the week. And so when we meet next on the 24th, Christina, we should have something to look at and we should be able to then plunk the other parts that we're each working on into it. And
Kirsten.
So, yeah, this is a really good time because we're between newsletter deadlines. So we hit her when she wasn't overloaded.
Yep.
Yeah, if I could just say I appreciate the opportunity to work on this with you, and it is the highest priority on my list right now. So I look forward to, and I really appreciate the fine example that you gave me to work from. That's going to save a ton of time. So thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Nikki,
So
one of the things I would like to share, if you don't mind, Christina and Roxanne, one of the things that we talked about, and hopefully this will kind of address your issue about, I know you said it's cliche, a way of life, but we talked about including within the job description and the ideal candidate. We also talked about including, and at first we talking about let's see, challenges because of our library district. And then we talked about the fact that maybe we shouldn't use that negative overtone of challenges, but opportunities that our unique library district brings to the table, because we are a very unique district, and we spent some time talking about those challenges, only not using that word. And I think that will also bring to light some of the, or address some of your concerns. We really need somebody who's going to be dedicated to our community and our public library district. So that was a concern of ours as well.
that's great. Thank you.
yeah, we definitely want to find someone who will be invested in the community if possible. Dave, to answer your question, so, if we can make this happen in the next 2 weeks, then while it's getting finalized and wrapped up, we will figure out where we'd like to post it, and hopefully be able to get some of these postings out there in the next 3 weeks.
That's great.
And then, we need to give at least a 4 or 5 week period for submissions. So I found it interesting that there's this library board's guide to hiring a new director out there, and in that it states that the average we can look at is a 27-week process, and that's the average. So, it's Take some time.
Yeah. Okay.
I like the fact that we are attempting this on our own first.
I agree. I agree with that 100%. So Christina, let me ask you, your intent, once we have the posting and we figured out, where we're, what avenues we're going to post them on, whether it's ILA or Rails or whatever, what's the plan once you start getting responses in? How do you envision that process?
So we're working on that right now too. The selection process and the timeline. That is one of our jobs for the next week. But I did like the idea that you brought to me about having one kind of secure mailbox for the purposes of this. And then we will go back to those surveys, go back to the job description, go back to the posting that we are in the process of writing, and create kind of a screening rubric and then a final rubric for the candidates so that we are doing everything as equally and quantitatively as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments? Brian, anything?
No, Richard, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks,
Is
guys.
that it, Christina?
That's it.
Okay. Any final comments on the plan that Christina just described? It's quite a chore when you really get into the nitty-gritty of it, and I appreciate you and Chris taking this on. It's
And Roxanne.
And Roxanne.
We make a
And
good team.
And
I
Kirsten.
have to say, even though
And
my
Kirsten.
hand has been in it and Roxanne's hand has been in it, Christina has done a tremendous amount of work on it. And every time we've met, she has been so well prepared that it's making our job a lot easier. So I personally would like to say thank you.
That's very
Well
kind.
done.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any final comments on that from anyone? Okay, that concludes the business for tonight. There will be no executive session. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call vote on adjourning?
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki is yes, Christina,
Yes.
and Richard.
Yes. So we are adjourned at 8:05 p.m.
Wow.
Thank you, everyone.